The date was May 3, 2007. The place, Praia da Luz, a sun-kissed resort town on Portugal's Algarve coast, a haven for families seeking a peaceful getaway. But as night fell over the Ocean Club resort, a different, darker narrative was beginning to unfold. Inside apartment 5A, a ground-floor unit facing a quiet street just outside the main complex, 3-year-old Madeleine McCann lay sleeping, or so her parents believed. She was blonde, bright, and by all accounts, a cherished child. Within hours, she would become the face of one of the world's most agonizing and enduring mysteries. Madeleine's parents, Kate and Gerry McCann, both respected British doctors, were dining just a short distance away, approximately 50 to 55 yards, at the resort's tapas restaurant. They were with a group of 7 friends, a close-knit circle who had holidayed together before. Each evening they followed a system, a seemingly sensible routine. Parents would take turns leaving the dinner table to walk back to their respective apartments and check on their sleeping children. It was a practice born of trust and the illusion of safety in the tranquil resort setting. The evening of May 3rd began like any other on their vacation. Around 8:30 p.m., Kate and Gerry sat down for dinner. At approximately 8:45 p.m., Gerry McCann performed the first check on his children. He used his key to enter apartment 5A. Inside the children's bedroom, he saw Madeleine sleeping in her bed near the window. Her younger twin siblings, Sean and Amelie, were also asleep in their cots. Everything appeared normal. He lingered for a moment before locking the door and returning to his meal. Around 9:00 p.m., one of their friends, Jane Tanner, left the table to check on her own daughter in an adjacent apartment. On her way back to the restaurant, she noticed a man walking across the road, carrying a small child in pale-colored pajamas. The child was barefoot. At the time, the sighting didn't trigger any alarm. Just another holidaymaker, perhaps, tending to a sleepy child. By 9:30 p.m., it was Matthew Oldfield's turn. He offered to check on both his own children and the McCanns. Reaching apartment 5A, he opened the door and stood at the threshold of the children's bedroom. He didn't go all the way in. He didn't visually confirm each child, but he heard what he described as steady breathing. The room seemed quiet, undisturbed. He assumed all was well and returned to the tapas bar. The critical moment arrived at 10:00 p.m. It was Kate McCann's turn to check. She walked to the apartment, entered through the front door, and immediately sensed that something was dreadfully wrong. The children's bedroom door was ajar, more open than it had been when Gerry last checked. The window in the room was wide open, the curtain flapping in the night breeze, and Madeleine's bed, the one closest to that window, was empty. The twins, Sean and Amelie, were still asleep, blissfully unaware of the nightmare unfolding around them. Madeleine was gone. Panic, raw and visceral, seized Kate. She turned and ran barefoot back to the restaurant, bursting in on her friends, her voice choked with terror. "They've taken her! They've taken Madeleine!" The idyllic holiday evening shattered. The group, friends and family, raced back to apartment 5A. Frantic searches began, in closets, under beds, behind doors. Nothing. Several of them spilled out into the dark streets, shouting Madeleine's name, their cries swallowed by the indifferent night. They fanned out, towards the pool, towards the beach, through the unlit back alleys. But no one had seen a thing. The shutters on the bedroom window, it would later be noted, had been raised from the outside. There were no screams reported, no signs of a struggle, just an open window and a missing child. Before the night of May 3rd, 2007, plunged them into an unimaginable abyss. The McCanns were, by all appearances, an ordinary, happy British family. Kate McCann, a dedicated general practitioner, and Gerry McCann, a respected consultant cardiologist, had built a comfortable life in Rothley, a quiet village in Leicestershire, England. Their careers were demanding but fulfilling, their home life stable and, from the outside, seemingly idyllic. However, beneath this veneer of conventional success lay a deeply personal journey, marked by quiet struggle and immense joy. The path to parenthood had been a long and emotional one for Kate and Jerry. For years, they faced the heartache of infertility, a painful chapter filled with dashed hopes and silent prayers. After multiple unsuccessful attempts to conceive, they turned to in vitro fertilization, IVF. Their perseverance was finally rewarded in May 2003 with the birth of their first child, Madeleine McCann. To her parents, Madeleine was more than just a daughter. She was their miracle. She was a bright, curious, and vivacious little girl, full of life and radiating an infectious energy. She quickly became the center of their world, a symbol of their enduring love and the fulfillment of a long-held dream. A few years later, in what felt like another unexpected blessing, Kate became pregnant naturally. She gave birth to twins, Amelie and Sean. The McCann household, once quiet with yearning, was now filled with the bustling energy of 3 young children. Their family felt complete, a testament to their resilience and the unpredictable turns of life. Madeleine, as the eldest, embraced her role as a big sister. She was often described as confident and sharp, with a loving and protective nature towards her younger siblings. She shared a strong, affectionate bond with her parents, who doted on their Maddie. In the spring of 2007, the McCanns decided to take a well-deserved family vacation. They planned a week-long break in sunny Portugal, choosing the Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz, Algarve. The dates were set: Saturday, April 28th, to Saturday, May 5th. It was intended to be a relaxing, casual getaway, a chance to unwind and create happy memories. They weren't traveling alone. Accompanying them were 7 of their closest friends, a group composed mostly of fellow doctors and medical professionals, individuals they had known for years. This circle included Dr. David Payne, his wife Fiona, and Fiona's mother, Diane Webster. Also part of the group were Dr. Russell O'Brien and his partner Jane Tanner, and Dr. Matthew Oldfield and his wife Rachel. Between the various families, they brought a total of 5 other children, making it a lively and companionable party. These families stayed in adjacent apartments at the Ocean Club Resort. Each evening, as per their established custom from previous holidays and the preceding nights of this trip, they would gather at the on-site tapas restaurant for dinner. While the children slept in their nearby apartments, the adults enjoyed their meal. Their system for checking on the children was informal but consistent. Each couple would take turns leaving the table, walking the short distance back to their apartment, ensuring their children were safe, and then rejoining the group. For several nights, this routine had worked without a hitch, reinforcing a sense of security that would soon be tragically shattered. The resort seemed safe, their friends were close, and the gentle Portuguese night air carried no hint of the nightmare that was about to descend upon apartment 5A. The immediate aftermath of Kate McCann's horrified cry, "They've taken her!" was a maelstrom of confusion and terror. The entire dinner party, friends and family, instantly abandoned their meal and raced back to apartment 5A. The small flat became a scene of frantic, desperate searching. Closets were flung open, beds overturned, every conceivable hiding place checked and rechecked. But Madeleine was nowhere to be found. The reality of her absence began to sink in, heavy and suffocating. Several members of the group, their voices hoarse with panic, ran out into the surrounding streets, shouting Madeleine's name into the darkness. They split into different directions, some heading towards the resort's pool area, others towards the beach, and some into the shadowy back alleys behind the Ocean Club complex. But the night offered no answers, no sightings, no trace of the missing 3-year-old. It was around 10:30 p.m., roughly 30 minutes after Kate's discovery, that staff at the Ocean Club joined the desperate search. Resort guests, alerted by the commotion, grabbed flashlights and fanned out, their own holidays abruptly interrupted by the unfolding crisis. Despite the growing number of searchers and the escalating panic, a crucial call had yet to be made. It wasn't until approximately 10:40 p.m., a full 40 minutes after Madeleine was found missing, that the resort reception finally telephoned the local Guardia Nacional Republicana, GNR, police. When the police eventually arrived at the Ocean Club, it wasn't a specialized crime unit trained for abductions or major incidents. The first responders were officers from the GNR, Portugal's National Guard, whose primary roles typically involved general patrol duties and traffic control. They reached the scene sometime between 10:50 p.m. and 11:10 p.m. By then, the apartment, the potential crime scene, had been significantly compromised. In the chaotic hours following Kate McCann's discovery, dozens of people, friends, resort staff, well-meaning guests, had walked freely in and out of apartment 5A. Footprints were overlaid, potential fingerprints smudged or obscured, and fibers transferred. Any critical forensic evidence that might have existed was in danger of being irretrievably lost or contaminated. One of the most significant initial investigative missteps was the failure to take proper, comprehensive photographs of the scene immediately upon the authorities' arrival. This oversight alone had the potential to destroy the forensic timeline, making it incredibly difficult to reconstruct the state of the apartment as it was when Madeleine disappeared. Furthermore, the official police statements from Kate and Jerry McCann were not taken until the following morning, a staggering 10 to 12 hours after their daughter had vanished. In any missing child case, these first few hours, often referred to as the golden hours, are absolutely critical. Leads are fresh, memories are clearer, and the chances of finding the child are at their highest. The delay in formally recording the McCann's accounts was not just unprofessional, it was a devastating blow to the nascent investigation. Adding to the series of early failings, there was no Amber Alert system activated in Portugal at the time, nor was any form of mass communication or national emergency broadcast initiated to alert the wider public to Madeleine's disappearance. Valuable hours ticked by before her photograph was widely distributed. The initial police response lacked the urgency and specialized expertise that such a terrifying situation demanded, setting a troubling precedent for the complex and fraught investigation that was to follow. As the initial shock began to subside, replaced by a desperate need for answers, the account of Jane Tanner, one of the McCann's friends, gained new significance. Around 9:05 p.m., while returning from checking on her own child, Tanner had seen a man carrying a small child across the road near the McCann's apartment. At the time, she'd thought little of it. Now it was the only potential eyewitness account of someone with a child in the crucial time frame. Her sighting, initially dismissed or not fully probed by the first responding GNR officers, would later become a focal point, albeit a contentious one. Tanner described the man as tall and thin, with dark brown hair, wearing a dark jacket and light-colored trousers. He was carrying the child horizontally in his arms, the child's head resting against his shoulder, limbs hanging loosely, a posture she later described as unsettling. The child, she recalled, was wearing light-colored pajamas, possibly short-sleeved with a floral pattern, a description that chillingly matched what Madeleine was believed to have been wearing that night. The man was walking eastward along Rua Doctor, Agostinho da Silva, away from the apartment block. Only later, in the throes of panic, did Jane Tanner realize the potential gravity of what she might have seen. This became known as the Tanner sighting. Broader search efforts intensified. Sniffer dogs were brought in and reportedly followed Madeleine's scent along the back of apartment 5A to a main road, where the trail then went cold. This suggested a possible departure by vehicle, but offered no concrete leads. Criticism soon mounted regarding the forensic collection process. When DNA samples were eventually taken, including from the Renault Scenic car the McCanns rented several weeks after Madeleine's disappearance, and from areas inside the apartment, the handling was reportedly poor. Allegations surfaced of outdated techniques and sloppy chain of custody protocols. Some evidence was even said to have been lost. By the time British forensic experts were brought in to review the material, contamination was a significant concern, rendering many findings inconclusive or difficult to interpret. The lack of timely and effective international cooperation also hampered the early investigation. Despite Madeleine being a British child missing on foreign soil, Portuguese police didn't formally request assistance from UK authorities or Interpol in the immediate aftermath. It took more than 5 days before British detectives were dispatched to Portugal to support the search. When they did arrive, The atmosphere between the Portuguese and British teams was reportedly tense and mistrustful, leading to strained collaboration. In a move that shocked many, just weeks after Madeleine's disappearance, Apartment 5A, the very place she vanished from, was put back on the rental market and occupied by other tourists. A potential crime scene was effectively erased, turned back into a holiday flat. Any remaining forensic traces, any chance to accurately revisit the environment, were lost. Amidst these procedural failings, a quiet but significant shift was occurring within the Portuguese investigation. Some investigators began to harbor doubts about the McCann's account of an abduction. This skepticism was fueled, in part, by the apparent lack of clear signs of forced entry into the apartment. While the window was open, there were reportedly no pry marks, no broken latches, and no definitive fingerprints on the outside that indicated a break-in. This detail triggered a dangerous assumption for some. If no one clearly came in from the outside, perhaps the event originated from inside the apartment. Instead of widening the search for a possible kidnapper, some factions within the Portuguese police began to narrow their focus onto the parents themselves. They started scrutinizing perceived inconsistencies in Kate and Jerry's statements, looking for contradictions rather than pursuing new external leads. This internal pivot culminated on September 7, 2007, when Kate and Jerry McCann were officially declared arguidos, formal suspects under Portuguese law. It was a staggering development. The grieving parents, who had launched a global campaign to find their daughter, were now under direct suspicion of being involved in her disappearance. The police floated a theory that Madeleine had died accidentally inside the apartment, and her parents, in a panic, had hidden her body and staged a fake abduction. To support this, cadaver dogs were brought in, and they reportedly alerted to the scent of human remains in 2 locations: behind the living room sofa in Apartment 5A, and in the boot of the McCann's rental car. Investigators also claimed to find traces of blood and DNA in these locations, but these forensic findings were never conclusive. The DNA samples were either too degraded, too minute for definitive analysis, or contained mixed profiles. British labs later stated the results could not definitively identify Madeleine or link the McCanns to her death. Kate McCann also revealed that police had pressured her to sign a confession, admitting she had accidentally killed her daughter and covered it up. She adamantly refused. The declaration of Kate and Jerry McCann as arguidos unleashed a media firestorm. The parents who had tearfully appealed for their daughter's return were now subjects of intense, often brutal scrutiny. Kate McCann, in particular, became a target. Her composure during public appearances, her perceived lack of visible tears on camera, was interpreted by some commentators and sections of the press as coldness or detachment, unbefitting a grieving mother. Portuguese and British tabloids ran relentless headlines questioning her emotional state. Even her habit of carrying Madeleine's pink stuffed toy, Cuddle Cat, was twisted by some into a manipulative prop rather than a symbol of a mother's enduring hope and grief. Psychological experts dissected Kate's behavior on air, labeling her too rational, too clinical. Her decision, along with Jerry's, to hire professional media advisors, Clarence Mitchell, a former UK government press officer, and Alex Woolfall, a crisis PR specialist, just days after the disappearance, backfired in the court of public opinion. To many, it felt staged, as if they were managing optics rather than enduring a personal tragedy. This fueled the narrative that they might have something to hide. The media onslaught reached a shocking low when the Daily Express, a major British tabloid, ran a front-page headline baldly stating, "They did it." No trial, no charge, just a damning accusation presented as fact. The McCanns fought back, suing Express newspapers for libel. They won, and the paper was forced to issue a public apology and pay substantial damages. Their solicitor, Adam Tudor, condemned the reporting, hoping newspapers would take a long, hard look at themselves. While a legal victory, the damage to their public image was profound and pervasive. Personal journals kept by Kate and Jerry during their agonizing time in Portugal were seized by police and subsequently leaked to the media. Private, anguished thoughts were twisted into sensational headlines, suggesting emotional instability or even guilt. Kate's devout Catholic faith, a source of solace for her, was also scrutinized. Her prayers and wearing of a crucifix sometimes portrayed as performative. In July 2008, nearly a year after being named suspects, Kate and Jerry McCann were officially cleared. The Portuguese Attorney General announced that their arguido status was lifted due to a lack of evidence to support any criminal charge against them. Simultaneously, the case file on Madeleine's disappearance was archived, suspended without an identified perpetrator. For the McCanns, it was a partial relief, but far from a vindication. Their daughter was still missing. Their names had been dragged through the mud, and the cloud of suspicion, once raised, proved difficult to entirely dispel. Despite being cleared, public opinion remained sharply divided. The McCanns, however, refused to let their daughter be forgotten. They continued their private campaign, channeling their efforts through the Find Madeleine Fund, established to finance search efforts and maintain public awareness. They knew publicity alone wasn't enough. They needed the weight of official institutional support. That support began to materialize in May 2011. Jerry McCann penned an open letter to the then UK Prime Minister David Cameron, urging a new independent review of the case. The letter highlighted the flaws in the initial Portuguese investigation and the family's desperate need for a fresh perspective. Cameron responded. The British government authorized the Metropolitan Police to launch a formal review, codenamed Operation Grange. Operation Grange was officially established in May 2011. Its initial mandate was not to conduct a new investigation from scratch, but to undertake a comprehensive review of all existing materials, tens of thousands of documents from Portuguese police files, private investigator reports, and international leads. The aim was to re-examine the entire case with fresh eyes, identify any overlooked evidence, and explore new lines of inquiry. At its peak, Operation Grange involved more than 30 dedicated officers, and its budget, funded by the Home Office, would eventually swell to over $13 million, making it one of the most expensive missing person investigations in UK history. The launch of Operation Grange signaled a new chapter, a renewed hope that the truth about Madeleine's disappearance might finally be uncovered. For years, Operation Grange meticulously sifted through the vast archives of information related to Madeleine's disappearance. Leads were re-examined, witness statements cross-referenced, and various theories, from burglary gone wrong to child trafficking, were explored and mostly ruled out. Then, in 2020, a dramatic breakthrough emerged, shifting the focus of the investigation significantly. Working in close collaboration with German authorities, Operation Grange identified a German national, Christian Bruckner, initially referred to publicly only as Christian B, due to German privacy laws, as a prime suspect. Born in Germany in 1976, Christian Bruckner was no stranger to law enforcement. His criminal record was extensive, spanning several decades in multiple countries, painting a disturbing portrait of a predatory individual. Crucially, at the time of Madeleine McCann's disappearance in May 2007, Bruckner, then around 30 years old, was living a transient life, drifting between Portugal and Germany. He was known to have resided in the Algarve region, in close proximity to Praia da Luz. His criminal history began early. In 1994, while still a teenager, he was convicted in Germany for the sexual abuse of a 6-year-old girl. He received a youth custody sentence for this offense, but subsequently fled to Portugal to evade it, returning to Germany in 1999 to serve his time. This established a pattern of evading justice that would continue throughout his adult life. Over the years, Bruckner accumulated convictions for a variety of offenses, including theft, burglary, often targeting holiday homes and seeking passports, drug trafficking, and, most alarmingly, possession of child abuse material. His offending demonstrated an escalating seriousness. Perhaps the most chilling connection to the McCann case was a crime he committed just 2 years before Madeleine vanished. In 2005, Bruckner brutally raped a 72-year-old American woman in her holiday home in Praia da Luz, the very same resort town where the McCanns were staying. This violent crime went unsolved for over a decade until DNA evidence finally linked Bruckner to the scene. He was convicted for this rape in 2019 and sentenced to 7 years in a German prison. The fact that a known sex offender with a history of violence had been operating in the immediate vicinity of the Ocean Club at the time of Madeleine's disappearance was a horrifying revelation. Witnesses and former associates described Bruckner as a drifter, often living in a distinctive yellow and white VW T3 Westphalia camper van or in dilapidated properties. He worked odd jobs and was known for his unsettling behavior, including allegedly watching children at resorts. His last known residence in Portugal before Madeleine went missing was just a few minutes' drive from the Ocean Club. Significantly, Bruckner abruptly left Portugal shortly after Madeleine McCann disappeared in May 2007. This sudden departure, combined with his disturbing background and proximity to the crime scene, placed him firmly on the radar of investigators once German authorities began to connect the dots. The emergence of Christian Bruckner as a suspect offered a tangible, albeit terrifying, new direction for an investigation that had long been mired in uncertainty. His association with the yellow camper van and a dark-colored Jaguar XJ6 also became key points of interest for investigators trying to piece together his movements and activities during that critical period. The public naming of Christian Bruckner as the prime suspect in June 2020 by German prosecutor Hans Christian Wolters sent shockwaves through the long-stagnant case. Wolters made the stark declaration that German authorities believed Madeleine McCann was deceased and that Bruckner was responsible. This assertion was based on a confluence of circumstantial but compelling pieces of evidence. A critical piece was cell phone data. Records indicated that a mobile phone registered to Bruckner received a 30-minute call at 7:32 p.m. on the evening of May 3, 2007. The call pinged a cell tower near the Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz, placing his phone in the immediate vicinity just hours before Madeleine was discovered missing. The identity of the person who called Bruckner, or the content of their conversation, remains unknown, as the number has reportedly been untraceable. This call, however, provided a crucial time and location link. Further disturbing discoveries came from a 2016 police raid on an abandoned factory site in Germany, previously owned by Bruckner. Buried on the property, beneath the body of his dead dog, investigators unearthed a chilling cache: USB sticks and memory cards containing thousands of files, including child abuse imagery and voyeuristic photos. While none of the images found at that time depicted Madeleine McCann, the sheer volume and depravity of the material, along with the elaborate method of concealment, painted a picture of a deeply disturbed and calculating predator. The raid also yielded other unsettling items: approximately 75 toddler swimsuits, children's toys, preschooler bikes, 3 working guns with ammunition, and a homemade mask. Investigators also focused on vehicles linked to Bruckner. His distinctive yellow and white VW camper van had been sighted in the Algarve region. More suspiciously, a dark-colored Jaguar XJ6, registered in Bruckner's name at the time of Madeleine's disappearance, was found to have been re-registered under the name of an acquaintance in Germany on May 4, 2007, the day after Madeleine vanished. This same model of Jaguar was later found at the German factory site during the 2016 raid, reportedly containing traces of unidentified chemicals in the boot. Data retrieved from a sat-nav device found during the 2016 factory raid revealed that Bruckner frequented the Arade Dam Reservoir, a secluded spot about an hour's drive from Praia da Luz. He reportedly called it his little paradise. Police also uncovered photographs showing Bruckner at this location, some of which were too explicit to be publicly released, including one doctored to show how he might look wearing a mask. Perhaps most chillingly, investigators found short stories written by Bruckner years after Madeleine's disappearance. These texts, translated from German, detailed graphic fantasies of abducting, drugging, and abusing women and young children. One story described ambushing a mother and daughter, using ether, and taking the child, welcoming her to paradise. Another imagined a 4-year-old blonde girl named Maid Annalie being presented to him for abuse. Testimony from a former associate, Helga B., added another layer of suspicion. Helga B. claimed that in 2008, at a music festival in Spain, he and Bruckner discussed the Madeleine McCann case. When Helga B. expressed curiosity about how a child could disappear so silently, Bruckner allegedly replied, "Well, she didn't scream." According to Helga B., Bruckner then realized the implication of his words and abruptly left the festival. This account was later corroborated, in part, by handwritten and signed insurance documents filed by Bruckner himself, detailing a camper van accident he had near the festival in Orgiva, Spain, in March 2008, placing him in the area as Helge B. had stated. German authorities also revealed they were in possession of an 80 GB hard drive and a laptop seized from Bruckner, the existence of which had been a closely guarded secret. It was believed these devices contained images from Bruckner's time in Portugal and information that might be key to persuading police that Madeleine died shortly after her disappearance. While no single piece of evidence provided a smoking gun, the cumulative weight of these findings led German prosecutors to their grim conclusion about Bruckner's involvement. While German prosecutors built their case against Christian Bruckner, another voice emerged, adding a deeply personal and harrowing dimension to the allegations surrounding him. Hazel Bean, an Irish woman, came forward with a story of a brutal attack she endured in Portugal in 2004, 3 years before Madeleine McCann vanished, an attack she firmly believed was perpetrated by Bruckner. In 2004, Hazel, then 20 years old, was on a working holiday in the Algarve. She recounted how, one night, after returning alone to her apartment for the first time, she was awoken by someone calling her name. Before she even opened her eyes, she knew something was terribly wrong. A man, dressed all in black, wearing a black mask and holding a knife, was standing over her. This terrifying masked intruder, she said, subjected her to a prolonged and violent sexual assault. He tied her hands, whipped her, and raped her multiple times. Chillingly, he set up a video camera and recorded the entire ordeal. Hazel was adamant that her attacker spoke English with a German accent. She also noted his slim build and fair eyebrows, visible through the eye holes of his mask. Crucially, she told Portuguese police at the time that she had seen a distinctive mark on her attacker's leg, possibly a tattoo or a birthmark. Her experience with the Portuguese police following the assault was deeply disillusioning. She felt they didn't believe her, that they followed her to see if her behavior somehow welcomed the attack. Forensic evidence, including bloodstains and her own fingernails embedded in the bedsheets from her struggle, was allegedly not collected for days, leaving the apartment largely as she had fled it. Years later, in 2020, when police released Christian Bruckner's photo in connection with the Madeleine McCann case, Hazel had an immediate and visceral reaction. "I just felt sick," she recalled. "I knew instantly that it was him." The eyes, she said, were unforgettable, an imprint she couldn't get rid of. Hazel Behan bravely agreed to testify against Bruckner at his trial in Braunschweig, Germany, in early 2024. This trial was not for the McCann case, but for 5 other unrelated offenses: 3 rapes, including Hazel's alleged rape, and 2 cases of sexual assault against minors. Her testimony was grueling, forcing her to relive the trauma in excruciating detail. However, in October 2024, the trial concluded with a shocking outcome. Christian Bruckner was acquitted of all 5 charges. The judge, while acknowledging that Hazel had likely been raped, was not satisfied that she could reliably identify her attacker solely from his eyes, especially given he wore a mask. The judge also suggested her identification might have been influenced by the publicity linking Bruckner to the McCann case, a claim Hazel vehemently denied, stating she hadn't followed the McCann case closely and didn't even know Bruckner was a suspect when she saw his photo. The prosecution immediately announced its intention to appeal the verdict. Adding to the controversy surrounding the acquittal was the revelation that potentially crucial corroborating evidence regarding the mark on Bruckner's thigh was not presented during Hazel's trial. Police reports from a physical examination of Bruckner in 2018 documented a scar on his outer right thigh. Further files reportedly contained a photograph of another scar on the inside of his right thigh. These details seem to align with Hazel's initial description of a mark on her attacker's leg given to Portuguese police in 2004, long before Bruckner was a public suspect. The court reportedly did not provide an explanation for why this evidence was not introduced. The acquittal was a devastating blow, not only to Hazel Bean and other alleged victims, but also to prosecutors who had hoped a conviction and a lengthy sentence would keep Bruckner incarcerated, buying them more time to build their case in the Madeleine McCann investigation. With his current 7-year sentence for the 2005 rape nearing its end, the prospect of Christian Bruckner being released as early as September 2025 became a stark and alarming possibility. The acquittal of Christian Bruckner in October 2024 sent a chill through investigators and the public alike. With his existing sentence for the 2005 rape of an elderly American woman in Praia da Luz due to end in September 2025, the clock was ticking louder than ever. Prosecutors, particularly in Germany, faced a desperate race against time. If they couldn't secure new charges or a successful appeal that would keep Bruckner behind bars, their prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann case could walk free. This urgency has fueled recent, though largely fruitless, search efforts. In 2023, Portuguese authorities, acting on requests from German investigators, conducted extensive searches of the Arade Dam area, a place Bruckner reportedly frequented and called his Little Paradise. They also searched other properties linked to him. These operations involved ground-penetrating radar, sniffer dogs, and forensic teams meticulously examining soil and vegetation. However, despite the intensity of these efforts, no conclusive new evidence directly tying Bruckner to Madeleine's disappearance, nor any sign of her remains, was publicly announced. The mood among investigators following these searches was often described as deflated. Amidst the focus on Bruckner, an older, less sensational theory has always lingered in the background: the drunk driver theory. This hypothesis suggests Madeleine might have woken up, wandered out of the unlocked apartment looking for her parents, and been accidentally hit by a vehicle. The driver, panicked and possibly intoxicated, might have then hidden her body to evade responsibility. While this theory accounts for the lack of forced entry and the suddenness of her disappearance without requiring a sophisticated abduction plot, it remains entirely unprovable. Praia da Luz in 2007 had minimal traffic surveillance, and no witnesses or physical evidence of such an accident ever surfaced. It's a theory born of frustration and the absence of concrete answers, offering a tragically mundane alternative to more sinister scenarios. For the UK's Metropolitan Police, Operation Grange technically remains active, though its scope has been significantly reduced. Madeleine McCann is still officially classified as a missing person by British authorities, not presumed dead, as German prosecutors believe. This distinction reflects the different evidentiary thresholds and approaches of the various jurisdictions involved. The British Home Office continues to allocate funding for Operation Grange, allowing a small team to pursue any credible new leads, though such leads have become increasingly rare. Through nearly 2 decades of unimaginable anguish, Kate and Jerry McCann have displayed unwavering perseverance. They continue their relentless search for answers, maintaining the Find Madeleine Fund and a dedicated website to raise awareness and solicit information. They regularly issue statements, particularly on anniversaries of Madeleine's disappearance, reaffirming their love for their daughter and their determination to find out what happened to her. Age progression images, showing what Madeleine might look like as a young woman, have been circulated globally in the hope of sparking recognition. If alive, Madeleine would now be in her early 20s. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann has transcended a mere missing persons case. It has become a global phenomenon, a dark touchstone in popular culture. It has laid bare the complexities and frustrations of international police cooperation, the often voracious and damaging nature of media speculation, and the profound inequalities in how missing persons cases are treated and resourced. The sheer volume of attention and funding devoted to finding Madeleine has, at times, drawn criticism, with some arguing that other, equally tragic cases receive far less support. Yet despite the countless theories, the endless speculation, and the years of intensive investigation, the central, agonizing question remains unanswered. Where is Madeleine McCann? For her parents, and for a world that has watched their ordeal unfold, the conflict between the faint flicker of hope and the stark, enduring reality of a mystery unsolved continues to cast a long, dark shadow.